Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells it all regarding family court, other court issues, as well as CPS. I am your host, Marianne Petrie. You can find me, my books, and blogs on dismantlingfamilycourtcorruption.com as well as Amazon. I have one announcement. Please notify your Attorney General in your state regarding solar panels made by Sonova or Generac Systems. If you're having any difficulty with this company, please let your Attorney General know who's in your state. Fill out the complaint form on their site. I have a return guest. I have Mr. Theo Chino back on, and he was last on the podcast, season 5, episodes 128, 143, 164, 187, 192, and 204, and 206. I welcome you back, Theo Chino. Hello, hello, hello,
Hello, hello, hello.
hello.
Oh, it almost seems as if we'll never run out of stuff to talk about.
No, no. And I'm up finally on YouTube to 2,500 subscribers.
Wow, congrats.
I know.
It's awesome. Okay. So today, what should we talk about? Oh yeah,
Prison. Do you want to talk about prison?
prison, jail, the extended stay in Castle Rock, Colorado. Someone we know he gives it 3.5 stars. This someone, just to paint the picture, because you know what? I love all these people coming out of the woodwork going, he did something wrong, blah, 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 blah. All this stuff that they come up with, right? Yeah, but blah, blah,
Hmm.
blah. And you know what they're doing is they're afraid for themselves. So they're coming up with 1,001 reasons like, this isn't going to be me. It'll never be me.
Oh,
Yes, yes.
you
If they
never
could
know.
do it to this guy, yeah, if they could do it to this guy, they can do it to anybody.
And this
Here's
is,
the basics on this guy.
oh yeah, go
Go
ahead. I
ahead.
was going to say, this is the Salem witch hunts all over again.
All over again. All somebody has to do is look at you and they want your stuff and
They want your
boom.
kids.
Yep. Yeah, you got kids, you got anything that anybody wants, they can just take it from you anytime they want.
Hmm.
And this guy is a combat veteran, successful business owner, lowest criminal score you could have in the state of Colorado and just in general, period. He's no drugs, no criminal activity, no beating, no cheating. What else? What else could he be? Oh my goodness. Well, he is a he, so that's kind of bad, but
Yeah, but
maybe
hey, I
depending on
was
who
in jail
you are.
too.
Oh, there we go. So see, it doesn't really matter. But the word she has he in it, so I mean, I guess you're kind of bad.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm bad.
yeah, bad girls, bad girls. But now the other thing is like I want what people who watch your podcast to start to pull their heads out of this whole boys versus girls distraction, straight versus gay distraction, Democrat versus Republican distraction. All this, you're that and not that, this religion and that religion, not that religion distraction, and all the other millions of excuses why people don't deserve to live,
Hmm.
right? Because that's what it all boils down to. Who has the right to determine whether or not somebody has the right to breathe and live?
Hmm.
And so Michael Caruso, Michael E. Caruso, Michael Evan Caruso, um, is being held since December 20th. So let's rewind. 9 police officers were sent out to arrest Michael E. Caruso at the Confluence apartment complex, which is a very nice apartment complex. He does well for himself and he can afford to live in a nice apartment complex, despite being unconstitutionally deprived of a big chunk of his assets, unconstitutionally being deprived of his basic human, not only not constitutional, but human rights by a judge who was brand new and appointed.
Ugh.
A judge who allegedly, and I wasn't there to see it, I'm going to be very clear again, allegedly was slurring his speech. A judge who did not understand what the word permanent meant
Ew.
while he was setting a permanent protection order based off of literally nothing when it comes to evidence.
Typical.
Right. There were some text messages that were brought up that were not verified and were really not relevant at all in establishing any kind of danger or threat, period.
Hmm.
So at some point, we can do an extended podcast on orders of protection in Illinois because the order is more important than the protection in Illinois or protection orders in other states. Whom do they really protect? I'm going to argue not only do they not protect anyone, they actually endanger the people that they are allegedly protecting, and they are also hurting millions of people by literally flushing their lives down the toilet. If you're a responsible citizen and you have an ounce of shame in you and you get hit with a false order of protection or a false restraining order, that could be the beginning of the end.
Hmm. Hmm.
Sometimes a little scratch is
It can,
all that's needed,
that can
right?
damage your whole career and lifestyle.
Correct. So here we have Michael Evan Caruso involved in an attorney engineered custody battle. And the biggest crime he committed was, in some people's books, is that he just didn't want to go away and not be his child's father anymore.
Hmm.
I mean, shame on him. The nerve. Absolutely horrible, right?
Well, he
How
put
dare
himself
he?
first.
Right, right. He put his child in front of his own best interests and needs. He didn't just go away and pay and leave this child without a father. Instead,
Hmm.
he had to decide whether or not to drain bank accounts that would eventually be his child's college fund
Mm.
and possibly be allowed to still be this child's father so this child could grow up with two biological parents rather than just one, or go away, oh, and probably still get those bank accounts drained and have the child grow up half an orphan, as we
Hmm.
say in the old country where my parents
Oh,
come from.
and also scoring a little bit higher on that ACEs score, adverse childhood experiences.
Correct. And you know, who would benefit from that? Wow, that's another 10 podcast topics, right?
Right.
I mean, if you have a bunch of kids in this country who are well adjusted and have a good relationship with both parents, if they're still alive, if they're
Hmm.
blessed to have two parents that are still alive, because not every kid does have that blessing to have both parents alive in their lives.
Hmm.
And these kids are well adjusted. I mean, what's going to happen to all the therapists? What's going to happen to all the family law professionals?
And that
What's going
they're,
to happen
yeah.
to all of their pilot fish? What's going to happen to family court, family trafficking, family cartel trafficking court? No, I'm sorry, family court professionals like judges. Where are these people who have zero experience in applying the law? Where are they going to get to wear a big, gigantic bib to work and act like a gigantic baby if everybody in this country is well adjusted and
Hmm.
doesn't believe that they need scammers like them in their lives,
Third party
ruining their lives
parasites.
worse?
Hmm.
Third party parasites, right? What's going to happen to these talentless, soulless family law professionals and their pilot fish? What's going to happen to them?
Yeah.
My goodness.
Flip burgers.
So, yeah, I mean, but honestly, I wouldn't let them touch my burgers. I wouldn't let them use my toilet, much less fix my toilet. There-
Yeah.
there's really no use for these people. They
No.
should all be in jail. And you know what? Those of you out there who are watching Marianne's podcast right now, do you hate your ex? Are you mad at them? You know what? Put that on pause because we have another mission, and that is to make sure that everyone from the family court mob, the family trafficking cartel known as the Domestic Relations Division, to make sure that they all are put behind bars far away from children where they can abuse no more children, where they cannot put any other children at risk anymore. And once they're all behind bars, and I personally decide whether or not they don't belong there, while we seize their assets and use them to help victims of the family courts all around the world.
Hmm.
Um, Once they're all behind bars, then you can unpause and go back to being angry at your ex because maybe they didn't unplug the toaster, or maybe they left the bathroom a mess, or maybe, I don't know.
Or maybe
You
they
came
perjured themselves on the stand by crying alligator tears that mom is dangerous and just wanted to keep the kids safe.
And I'm sure they were not coached one little bit on how to
No.
make that happen. I'm sure there was no financial incentive for anyone in that courtroom for them to be doing that stuff, right?
Hmm.
Yeah. Hate your ex after the family court, family trafficking pirate ship cartel known as the Domestic Relations Division after they're all behind bars where they belong. Then
Hmm.
you can start hating your ex again. So this is the work we're doing now. So Michael Caruso, he's got his child sitting on his lap. His child is on. I won't disclose anything about his child, but he is not even his age, but he's very young, and he's sitting on his father's lap playing John Madden football in the rec room, which is a very nice, swanky place to play video games of the Confluence in Colorado. And nine of the boys in blue, nine police officers, nine. Why nine, Marianne? Do you know why?
Well, is the father so dangerous, do you think, that he would
No,
need?
because they no, no, no. It's because they couldn't find more than nine. Otherwise, they would have sent more.
Oh, well, they were all at the donut shop.
You know why? Actually, they may have rallied there first, maybe. Um, do you know why those police officers were so well fed and rested and armed up and free to go arrest Michael Caruso while he had his child sitting on his lap?
Hmm.
Because they weren't down the road at a bunch of apartments in Aurora, Colorado that had been taken over by tourists who can't seem to find their visas, who are part of an organization. It's a gang that took over apartment complexes. They didn't get one scratch on them handling that situation. Instead, they were nice and rested up and happy and fat and ready to arrest Michael E. Caruso while his child sat in his lap. But he must have done something wrong, right, Marianne?
Oh, what could that be now? Oh,
It
what?
must have been something horrific.
Oh, he missing one child support payment. Could that be it?
Well, I was thinking like maybe they found out that he was part of Hans Gruber's crew and that he was involved in blowing up the Nakatomi building, or maybe I don't know. Maybe he was part of Charles. No, he's too young to be part of Charles Manson's group. I
Hmm.
don't know what it was, but it must have been something really serious to send nine police officers to arrest him on December 20th.
Oh,
And
at taxpayers' expense. Don't forget the
at
taxpayer.
taxpayer, this is why we pay taxes. You know, if you're a good taxpayer, look at that. If
Hmm.
you're a good tax-paying citizen, look what you are funding. You're funding this. Things like this, not apartment complexes being taken over by foreign gangs.
Hmm.
Governor Polis, I'm talking to you in Colorado. Yeah, you and your buddies figured out what the source of the problem was. It was the landlord's fault. Thank you. Wow. So good that you guys are protecting everyone out there in Colorado. Picking on the landlord for having his apartment complex overrun by a foreign gang that you and your whole power squad failed to prevent and failed to deal with. Instead, what do? You arrest Michael Caruso, a combat veteran, a guy with no criminal history, a guy who has been put through the ringer by this fake, unconstitutional court system. by a judge who was appointed, who was allegedly, again, slurring his speech, and who allegedly, because I wasn't there, didn't know the full impact of the word permanent, even though he went to fancy law school, even though he worked for his mommy's law firm, from what I understand. Again, not
Mama's
sure if this is
boy.
all true.
Mama's boy.
Well, and there's nothing wrong with being a mama's boy.
Oh,
But there could be, though. There could be. Especially when maybe, yeah, I'm not even going to get into that. So next, he's arrested in front of his child. He's taken away to the extended stay in Castle Rock in Douglas County, Colorado. And he's placed on 19 hours of lockdown. From what I'm told, no sunlight, no nothing for 19 hours a day. And here's the best part. His bond, $500,000. Now, for our listeners out there who don't know what that means, okay, $500,000. That could buy you a pretty nice house almost anywhere in the country.
Mhm.
And who don't know what would equate $500,000 a bond, he must have done something really bad, right, Marianne? What is he being accused of? What did he do? He did something wrong.
Well, that's what the small-minded people would think that don't look on the other side of the coin and actually don't explore the whole story.
Correct. Well, and again, because they're scared and they're weak. I mean, if they even take the time to listen, because most of them don't,
Hmm.
they
Hmm.
don't see that their country has been infiltrated by these family courts, and
Hmm.
that sooner or later, and the people without kids go, "Not my problem. I don't have kids." It's like, yeah, you're paying too. You are paying. Look up
Oh,
Title IV D&E, and you are paying. You're not paying for deadbeat parents that won't pay their child support. You're actually paying because there are good parents out there who are acquiescing to this whole scheme out there. You're paying more because you have good parents who are staying silent and not asking questions like Michael Caruso was. That's essentially what he did. He
hmm.
asked too many questions. He complained. When his complaints were ignored, he appropriately followed up, from what I'm being told.
Hmm.
And this was interpreted as harassment. So not only are you being abused, not only are you being dismissed, but now they're turning around and accusing you of harassing them when you're calling out the fact that when they do their job, they're doing it abusively. And
Using
when they're
Darvo.
not doing their job, yes, Darvo. So originally they said something about ethnic harassment, and then that changed and it was $500,000. So to put in perspective too, there are a few people, I've talked to some bondsmen out in Colorado. There are a few people that have seen higher bonds, but this is for people who actually murdered people in some kind of vehicular homicide or otherwise.
Mhm.
$500,000 bond for a class 5 felony is quite a bit out of line. And I thought maybe somebody hit the wrong button. Maybe somebody pushed another zero in by accident or two.
Mhm.
No.
Oh, man.
Now, when you look at the updated charges, and I can pull them up,
Oh, yes. Harassment, phone threat, ethnic, intimidation, and retaliation against a judge.
right? And do you see the amounts there? Are you able to read the amounts?
Um, okay, I don't know if it's
Okay,
showing the amounts. Oh, wait. A bond amount of 150,000 and one of 6,000.
right. So you'll see there, you see that word at the bottom? Retaliation against a judge. Now, let's talk about the word retaliation. When you talk about harassment, when you talk about discrimination,
Mhm.
and I believe retaliation falls in this category too, a lot of times there's a power component there. And that power component is who has more power in this dynamic.
Mhm.
So the definition is that someone who is deemed as not the minority,
Mhm.
cannot claim discrimination from someone who is a minority because theoretically there's a power dynamic there. You may or may not agree with this, but let's go with that for a second because we have all of our people who claim that they care so much about vulnerable people in there. Well, if you look here, retaliation kind of works the same way. How could someone with little to no power retaliate against someone who has all of the connections and power? And a bigger discussion, and I'd like to call out somebody on this show too, Alphonse Fagiolo. And I think he's from out in Philly.
Mhm.
He talked about how, according to the Constitution, no one is supposed to have any extra rights over anyone else.
Mhm.
So your rights are whatever they are plus zero over someone else. So
Mhm.
no one has the right to harass, intimidate, threaten, etc., deprive people of their property, etc., any more than anybody else. But we all know that a judge is someone special.
Mhm.
Judge has legal connections. Now, Michael E. Caruso used to have connections in the legal community, but he does not anymore. And that connection now is, let's just say, not his ally right now. And that may be when we dig into the root of how this all happened, that might be an important part of evidence here.
Mhm.
And then because when he felt like his constitutional rights were not only trespassed upon, but violated, and he raised the question respectfully, they came back and said, ding, can I have immunity for 100?
No.
And then he pulled respectfully, legally, a Karen move. He said, can I speak to your manager? And when he complained to this person next up in the power line, ding, nothing to see here. They have immunity anyway. Not, your complaint is frivolous, not, your complaint makes no sense. You're just being harassing and ridiculous now. That's not true. He did not violate your constitutional rights. It's like, well, even if he did, ding, can I have immunity for 100?
Mhm.
And so he says, well, can I speak to your manager? And so on and so on and so on. It turns out that there are a lot of people who are they're not happy
Mhm.
in the slightest bit with the performance of all these people going all the way up to Governor Polis in Colorado with the way they handle things and the way they respond to people who are not happy. That they are there to serve and protect, that they are there paid for by the taxpayers to protect people, to serve them. And a bunch of people started going to Michael Caruso and saying, hey, I had the same experience. Now, I wonder if that had anything to do with this claim of retaliation against the judge. Again, how do you retaliate against the judge? Because from what I understand, no one grabbed this judge.
Mhm.
No one even yelled at him. No one threatened him, from what I understand again.
Mhm.
No one did anything. But what exactly does retaliation against the judge and phone threat harassment. See, harassment slash phone threat slash ethnic intimidation. And the contempt of court we can get into in a separate one. But when you submit a complaint and no one responds, and you make a phone call and you keep it HR appropriate,
Mhm.
you keep it PG, even
Mhm. Yeah.
G, and you say, hey, what's going on with this complaint? And they're not responding to you, and you are forced to keep calling until you get an answer of what the status is. How is that interpreted
He's
as
being
a phone threat?
railroaded. Right. He's being
Right.
railroaded.
Well, it sure looks like it, right? We don't know for sure. I'm very careful in what I do when I help people who look like they are victims of a very predatory court system. I want to get the full story. I want to know as much as I can. And so you never know who you're talking to. Someone could come to you and cry and be super convincing,
Mhm.
but it could all be a sham. And in this case, I have followed Michael Caruso's situation very closely for quite some time.
Hmm.
And what it looks like here is that the real retaliation that's taking place is not Michael Caruso against the judge. Obviously, if you have a $500,000 bond for something that should be 50,000 max,
Oh.
obviously, if you're automatically thrown into 19 hours of lockdown, obviously, if you're arrested by 9 officers, because, they didn't have 10 on shift that day, but the maximum they could do, obviously, if you are being told, oh, by the way, there was something mentioned about an injunction on assets. Don't know the details yet, but it doesn't sound good.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
It sounds like retaliation. So let's talk about what retaliation is. At work, in terms of HR, if someone has a complaint about their supervisor,
Hmm.
let's just say they said their supervisor propositioned them inappropriately. Let's just say the supervisor didn't do it though. This person was lying because they were mad about not getting a raise or whatever.
Hmm.
And then HR is looking into it. Well, while HR is looking into it, this supervisor who was lied about by this employee who's mad because they didn't get the raise they wanted. The supervisor's so mad, they go, you know what? Guess who's going to be working third shift in the meat cooler, right?
Hmm.
Because they know that this complaint was not valid, so they want to what? It's the R word. Let's say it all together, children. Retaliate.
Yeah.
This is someone who has power over somebody else, retaliating against someone who is making a complaint. Now, whether the complaint is valid or not, because I don't know every single molecule or every bit and byte of Michael E. Caruso's complaints and what all happened with those. They may be valid, they may not be. Based on everything we've seen, Marianne, and what we've dealt with, they're probably very appropriate and very valid, right?
I know mine were.
Right. But as you know, these judges have immunity. So you have a judge who's got all this power and immunity to boot, and he's getting complained about, and he's so hurt
Oh.
that he has to complain and say that someone with no power over him is retaliating against him while he is retaliating against this person who may or may not have a valid claim against him. So there is a lot of explaining to do. In fact, when the bond was lowered to 150,000 from 500,000, there was no explanation, no clear explanation provided at that time. Because there's two, right? There's 150,000 and a $6,000 bond.
Mm-hmm.
And there was no explanation why the one was $500,000. But
Mm-mm.
it pretty much made it impossible for him to get out. Tomorrow will be a full month that Michael E. Caruso has been the guest at the extended stay in Castle Rock in Colorado, at Douglas County, Colorado. And he gives it a 3.5 stars so far. He's still in good spirits.
But is his
So
child? That must have
there
scared the
you go.
hell out of that little kid. I mean, I think that would just blow my mind as a kid to see all these men come at you.
Yeah, and they tried to handle the situation as delicately and as appropriately
Mm-hmm.
as possible.
Mm-hmm.
But the real way to handle that would be to say, you know what? Could we talk to you out in the hallway? Listen,
Mm-hmm.
could you get the kid's mother over here? We don't even want the kid to see us. See,
Right.
this is massive, massive lawsuit territory now,
Oh, it is.
right?
Yes.
Some people really need to be taught a lesson because whether Caruso's complaints were valid or not, this was blatant retaliation
Hmm.
against him for complaining. And they used whatever connections and power they had to really teach him a lesson. And what's that lesson we all learned today, boys and girls? What did you learn from this, Marianne?
I'm just so speechless. I'm just so disgusted. The lesson that I learn is don't trust anybody. Oh, I had a judge harass me out of vengeance. I don't know what her problem was. I don't know.
Well,
I
see, there you go. I'd love to see what our listeners comment. We want some more interaction here because what did you all learn from the situation? What are you all seeing here? Because if you have someone who's on 19 hours of lockdown, $500,000 bond, no explanation why, way like 10, maybe 100, 10 to 20 times at least higher than what it should have been for the alleged charges, which I'm sure if the real truth came out, he would be vindicated if the real truth were allowed to come out in a
Mhm.
jury trial. He will be vindicated. I'm I'm a betting man. And I would stake everything on if the real truth were allowed to come out and there
Mhm.
wasn't some sort of dirty jury or something, this would result in massive lawsuits against the county.
Mhm.
And
Yeah, that,
so
that should happen.
this, yeah, what they're doing to him is definitely retaliation. What he did to them, was he retaliating against the judge? I mean, how do you even do that? How do you retaliate against somebody who has way more political power, way more legal power than you do? How do you retaliate against the judge? Did he steal his parking spot at the courthouse? Is that what he did? I don't think so.
Or did he
Did
take
he?
his pet pigeons and encourage them to fly over his car and mess it up, maybe?
I mean, I don't even understand. Oh, I get it. Maybe what he did was he went to the dry cleaners and he claimed all of his robes and he wore them around, right? No, he did nothing of the sort, right? It's like, how do you even retaliate against a judge who has all this power, who's being paid to sit there, who has lots of buddies physically and legally protecting him, and he has immunity? And they came out in their complaint responses and basically said that he's got immunity, so why waste your time complaining? You see?
Hmm.
And there it is right there where they show the ugliness of the situation. They talk this big game about best interests of the children and
Yeah.
they say all this stuff. But when you challenge them, when something doesn't make sense and you ask a question, you'll see the ugliness come out and you'll see the retaliatory behaviors that people in power will employ when they're annoyed
Hmm.
because someone is asking a question. So
It's
more
disgusting.
to be, yeah, I mean it's absolutely horrible, right? So Michael Caruso though is somebody who's a combat veteran who went to fight for his country. Right, wrong, or somewhere in between, he put his skin on the line for everybody in this country, every ethnicity in this country.
Hmm.
And he was fighting people that do not like certain ethnicities in this country and
Hmm.
would like to. He was fighting these people that are a real vocal threat towards a certain ethnicity in this country. And he was fighting those people that were a threat to them. And
Hmm.
he put his guts on the line for this country. He came back and he made a lucrative business. He's actually doing something positive.
Hmm.
And what happens? How is he treated when he wants to ask a pusillanimous little would-be God emperor why they are wielding their power so maliciously, why they are being so reckless and wanton with their power. And when he asks questions and he keeps on saying, this just doesn't make sense. I'm a grown up. I know how things are supposed to work. And no, I'm not scared of you people. And he's still not scared. He's
Hmm.
putting his skin on the line for everybody in this country right now, mostly for himself, right? He admits it. Before he'd been put through the family court torture, the family court terrorism, he wouldn't have wasted an extra second thinking about what people go through in family court because he's like, not my problem.
Hmm. Hmm.
But now it is his problem. And this fight that he's fighting is not just for him, not just for his child. And whether or not the other parent of the child knows it or not, he is also fighting for the other parent of this child's right to be in their child's life.
Mm-hmm.
He's fighting for every parent in this country's right to be in their children's lives. And he is happy. I'm sure he's not enjoying himself great because he only gave it 3.5 stars, not 5. But
Mm-hmm.
he is happy to be doing what he's doing, not only for himself, but everybody's family in this country right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost as if he's being put through this for a reason. And so Governor Jared Polis might have some explaining to do when maybe someone that he appointed and other friends of theirs are retaliating. The latest is another judge was brought in from another county to assess this bond, and it was dropped. And it's still way too high per the alleged charges. But
Mm-hmm.
from what I'm being told, again, unverified, Douglas County has recused itself in the case. So this is going to be taken outside of that jurisdiction to be looked at. Jared Polis, you make some very cute videos online, and you seem like a really nice guy when I watch your videos. You appointed some judges, and they may not be acting very judicial. Jared Polis, if you're listening, I'd like you to take a special interest in this case, in the case of Michael Evan Caruso.
And do the right thing.
Yeah, he has power to fix this.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I'm
again, like I said, I think he should drop everything he's doing and look into this. I'm sure he's got some other stuff going on, but we know that he's not dealing with some other things going on in his state.
mm-hmm.
So I do know that there are some other things that probably are maybe even more severe than this to many more people in his state. But at the same time, this is concerning because, again, people he appointed are claiming while they're in a position of power that they're being retaliated against. And again, once the explanation is provided, maybe, maybe.
Mm.
But until that explanation is provided, I'm perplexed on how someone with no legal connections and no legal power and no political connections or power can retaliate against someone who is that much more powerful than them, who was apparently very abusive, dismissive, reckless, wanton, and even malicious with the power that they were appointed and given.
Mm-hmm.
Any other thoughts, Marianne?
Well, I want them to know how this has affected his child through the adverse childhood experience score,
Yeah.
as well as doing this to someone, which can happen to any one of us.
Well, and there are those out there that believe that their real job is not to lower that adverse, what is it again? The
Oh,
ACEs?
ACEs, right?
Oh,
Yeah.
that actually they're there to raise those scores because that keeps them and all of their associates loaded up with plenty of work for decades to come. There are those out there that say that. I am listening, I'm processing. I'm not saying no, I'm not saying definitely yes, but cases like this tend to make me go more with a yes
Mm.
for the time being until I see or hear more because Governor Polis, like I said, seems like a very nice man. And he has the power to look into this and to straighten this situation out.
Mhm. And do the right.
Whether it, yeah, and whether it hurts or helps his political standing. I mean, this is why, this is why people are given power for moments like this
Mhm.
to check things, to rectify problems. And so before we end this off too, speaking of rectification, if anybody out there listening has paid more than a few $1,000s to a predator that calls themselves a lawyer that floats around in the scummiest, dirtiest sewer of the legal realm, otherwise known as family law,
Hmm.
contact me and we will look at your bills and kind of unravel what was done together to see if any remedies can be suggested, including possibly either reduction in bill amounts or refunds.
Hmm.
Both have happened, and we'd be happy to look at your past and present bills together with you in order to see if you and your family can keep more of their resources if you feel that you were given services that were inferior, possibly even damaging to your family,
Oh,
and you were
damaging.
overcharged.
Hmm. How can people reach you?
Well, funny that you ask. They can call me at, and is the screen still showing my image?
No, it's still showing the housing facility and total bond amount.
Gotcha. Good. That's what I wanted. So I'm going to read out my phone number and then we can post it down below as well too.
Sure.
You can call 312-690-3788
I'll put that
and
in the
leave,
podcast notes.
thank you. Yeah, leave a voicemail.
Mhm.
And again, when you call, try your very best not to talk about how horrible your ex was. Let's just talk about those lawyers and how awesome they weren't and how
Mhm.
big their bills were and why.
Yeah. How people are taken advantage of. God help us.
Yeah. And again, like I always say, and this is what we're trying to undo, if there was a family on the side of the road who just got into a horrific accident and there was a group of people driving around in something that looked like an ambulance, dressed up like paramedics, pulling over and robbing these people and beating them up worse, and then pointing at them and saying, "This is your fault." I
Mm.
think we would all agree that something should be done with these people. So that is in essence what way too many family law, air quotes, practitioners and their pilot fish actually do. They just prey on people in bad situations and they do nothing but actually make the situation worse. And of course, taking your money isn't
Hmm.
going to make it any better.
Hmm.
So there
They
we are.
take all of it, people, all of it.
They figure out how many hours they can squeeze in when they look at your financial affidavit, and they will make your case as complicated as it needs to be. And then when the money's drying up, they'll hit not light speed, ludicrous speed, like in Spaceballs, in order to
Oh, split. Oh my
so
goodness.
yeah. Any last thoughts, Marianne? Or
Well, I think we should all say our prayers. This doesn't happen to us.
right. Everybody's listening
Yeah.
here. It's something like this or even worse has happened to you. You're not alone. Let's all get together and see how we can start to reverse this cycle. Let's um let's stop enabling these predators
Hmm.
to do this to people's families. Let's find a way to legally stop them, and God willing, we will.
Definitely. Hey, don't jump off, okay? Slam
Okay.
the Gavel is a podcast to help the public understand what really goes on in these courtrooms. I am your host, Marianne Petrie, and you can find me on Spotify, YouTube. Please like and subscribe. Apple, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Google, and other platforms I don't know about. Again, feel free to buy me a coffee to help keep this podcast going. Thank you, Theo Chino, my co-host. Hey, come back on again.
I'm your Ed McMahon.
That's right.
Thank you, Marianne. Ciao.
Ciao.